What would you do if fear didn't exist? Nietzsche believed that courage is not just a virtue, but a daily choice to live intensely. Even when the world around us seems full of challenges, he saw courage as the ability to embrace life in all its beauty and difficulty, understanding that fear is simply part of the journey. Think for a moment. At some point in your life, you've likely hesitated because of fear. Perhaps it was a big decision, an opportunity that seemed too overwhelming, or a change calling you, yet you postponed it because you didn't feel ready. What if, in that moment, you had taken a step forward? How might your life look today? Nietzsche reminds us that life gains meaning precisely when we face what scares us. True growth, he argued, doesn't come from comfort, but from the courage to step into the unknown. As he wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." In this video, we'll delve into how Nietzsche defined courage, how fear limits us, and most importantly, how you can transform your relationship with fear. Together, we'll understand how every small courageous choice can reshape how you see yourself and the world around you. For Nietzsche, courage isn't merely about confronting danger or pretending fear doesn't exist. It's something much deeper. Courage, at its core, is the ability to affirm life in all its nuances, even when it brings pain, uncertainty, or hardship. It's about choosing to keep going, even when the path ahead seems daunting. One of his most famous concepts, "become who you are," encapsulates this idea. For Nietzsche, courage is essential for us to transform into who we truly are. It's not about a fixed destiny, but an ongoing process of growth, where we face the fears that hold us back. Picture a sculptor standing before a block of marble. They must confront the resistance of the stone to reveal the form hidden within. We are much the same, shaping our lives through courageous choices. Nietzsche lived his philosophy. He faced isolation, harsh criticism, and financial struggles. Yet he refused to take the easier path. His courage lay in staying true to his ideas, even when it meant going against the grain of his time. He shows us that courage isn't always outwardly grand. It's often quiet and solitary, but profoundly transformative. Courage, according to Nietzsche, is like a muscle we can strengthen. It's not about leaping straight into the unknown, but starting with small steps. Facing a smaller fear today prepares us for bigger challenges tomorrow. Why not reflect on that now? Think of something you've been avoiding. What if, just for a moment, you decided to face it? That first move, no matter how small, is already an act of courage. Fear is an ancient emotion, deeply rooted in our evolution. It was essential for our survival in primitive times, alerting us to predators and immediate dangers. But today, fear often takes subtler forms, paralyzing us in situations that aren't truly threatening. It's as if our brain, still wired for survival, mistakes challenges for threats. Nietzsche saw fear as a force that can shape us in two ways. We can submit to it, letting it limit our choices and shrink our possibilities. Or we can confront it, turning it into a lever for growth. To him, fear isn't something to be eliminated, but rather understood and overcome as part of the process of becoming who we are. A helpful metaphor is to think of fear as frosted glass. It distorts your view, making situations appear more uncertain than they actually are. What lies on the other side seems blurry, perhaps even threatening. But when we move closer and look more carefully, we realize that what seemed intimidating isn't always as scary as we imagined in everyday life. Fear can show up in unexpected ways. A classic example is someone hesitating to change jobs due to fear of financial instability. They remain stuck in a place that doesn't fulfill them because familiarity feels safer than the unknown. Nietzsche challenges us to ask, to what extent are these fears real? And to what extent are they illusions we create to avoid discomfort? Fear doesn't just protect us. It also tells us stories about who we think we are. It makes us doubt our abilities, our worth, and our potential. This is why Nietzsche invites us to look at fear with curiosity, like someone trying to understand what they're avoiding. What has fear made you believe about yourself that might not actually be true? Not all fear is the same. Some fears are obvious, like a fear of heights or accidents. Others are more subtle but have a profound impact on our choices and how we live. Nietzsche believed that understanding what paralyzes us is the first step to overcoming it. Let's explore 3 types of fear that often block our potential. Fear of failure. Fear of failure is one of the most common fears. It makes us procrastinate, abandon important projects, or not even start something we deeply desire. It's like an inner voice whispering, "What if you're not good enough?" For Nietzsche, this fear stems from a distorted view of mistakes. He believed failure isn't an end but a lesson, an opportunity to grow. Think about a time when you avoided a challenge because you were afraid to fail. Maybe it was a presentation at work, a competition, or even a career change. What if, instead of seeing failure as an enemy, you treated it as a teacher, as Nietzsche put it? By facing discomfort, we become stronger and more resilient. Fear of success. Interestingly, success can be just as frightening as failure. It may seem contradictory, but many people avoid opportunities because they fear the responsibilities, expectations, and changes that come with success. This fear, often unconscious, reflects a resistance to leaving behind who we are today to become who we could be. For instance, someone might decline a promotion because they feel more comfortable in their current role than with the demands of leadership. Nietzsche prompts us to ask, is the fear of success actually a fear of letting go of a version of ourselves that no longer serves us? By examining these fears with honesty and courage, we can start transforming the way they influence our lives. Nietzsche believed that these reflections, and the choices we make as a result, are the essence of personal growth. Fear of judgment. The fear of what others think is perhaps the most limiting of all. It stops us from sharing our opinions, trying new things, or exposing ourselves to the world. This fear acts like a constant shadow, shaping our actions to either please others or avoid criticism. How many times have you hesitated to do something because you were worried about what others might say? Nietzsche would remind us that living under the approval of others is a betrayal of ourselves. He believed that authentic freedom is only possible when we learn to value our own opinion more than the opinions of others. Each of these fears, failure, success, and judgment, has the power to block us. But Nietzsche saw fear as an invitation to courage. He provokes us to ask, what if we face these limitations not as weaknesses, but as inevitable parts of the growth process? Nietzsche viewed fear as an unavoidable aspect of human existence. For him, it wasn't about eliminating fear, but learning to live with it. Embracing it as part of growth. This idea connects deeply with one of his core philosophies, amor fati, or the love of fate. This concept encourages us to accept not only the good parts of life, but also its challenges, pains, and uncertainties, because these are the moments that shape who we are. Think of amor fati as the ability to look at your life, including moments of fear and difficulty, and say, yes, I accept all of this because it's part of my journey. Nietzsche didn't see fear as something to be fought or rejected, but as an opportunity for transformation. Fear puts us face to face with our limitations, and by confronting it, we discover our inner strength. To illustrate this, we can think of Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. He faced thousands of failures before succeeding. Instead of seeing each failed attempt as a defeat, Edison treated them as lessons. Nietzsche would say that Edison demonstrated amor fati in action, embracing the difficulties of the process as part of the path towards something greater. For Nietzsche, fear is a mirror that reflects what we value most. When we fear losing something or failing, it reveals what is important to us. This is why he believed that instead of running from fear, we should explore it. What is your fear trying to teach you? What if, instead of resisting fear, you embraced it? Imagine what it would be like to accept your uncertainties as part of the process of living fully. If you could see fear as an ally, what would change in your life? Nietzsche believed that this shift in perspective is what allows us to overcome our internal barriers and move closer to an authentic life. Overcoming fear is a continuous process that requires both self-awareness and practical action. Nietzsche believed that courage doesn't arise out of nowhere. It is built gradually, through small but consistent decisions. To transform fear into courage, you need to start by recognizing its presence, understanding its impact, and gradually facing it with intention. 1. Recognize fear. The first step is to name your fear. Often, it acts as an invisible force, shaping our decisions without us realizing it. Take a pen and paper and write down what scares you. It could be the fear of failure, being judged, or not being enough. Also, list how these fears have affected your life. Do you avoid opportunities? Procrastinate important decisions? Naming fear is like turning on a light in a dark room. It doesn't make the fear vanish, but it becomes far less intimidating when you can see it clearly. 2. Start with small steps. Facing big fears all at once can be overwhelming. That's why starting small makes all the difference. Choose something that challenges you but feels manageable. If you're afraid of public speaking, start by practicing alone, recording your voice, or speaking to trusted friends. If your fear involves bigger changes like switching jobs, begin by researching options or talking to people who have taken that step. Each small action is a brick in the foundation of your confidence. A practical example is someone who was terrified of sharing their thoughts on social media out of fear of judgment. They started by posting small reflections they felt comfortable sharing. Gradually, positive feedback encouraged them to share bolder content. Today, they use social media as a platform for authentic expression. This transformation began with one small step. 3. Reframe fear. Nietzsche teaches us to change how we view fear. Ask yourself, what if this works out? Or, what can I learn, even if things don't go as planned? Seeing fear as an opportunity rather than a barrier transforms your relationship with it. Failure stops being an enemy and becomes a step on the ladder of growth. For instance, imagine someone avoiding taking on larger responsibilities at work because they fear failure. Reframing the situation could mean realizing that even if mistakes happen, each attempt brings learning and experience. This new perspective on fear paves the way for action. 4. Build a courage routine. Courage isn't a one-time event, it's a daily practice. Adopt simple habits, like writing down one fear each day and thinking of a small step to face it. Practice gradual exposure by putting yourself in situations that feel uncomfortable but are safe. Over time, what once seemed impossible becomes second nature. For Nietzsche, courage isn't about never feeling fear. It's about choosing movement over paralysis. It's a skill that strengthens with every decision, no matter how small. So, where can you start today? Courage isn't an isolated event, but an ongoing practice revealed in daily choices. Small gestures, seemingly insignificant, lay the foundation for a braver life. Nietzsche invites us to see these decisions as opportunities for affirmation, where each act, however small, brings us closer to a more authentic existence. 1. Record your fears. Start with a simple yet transformative practice. Journaling. Dedicate a few minutes each day to write down what scares you and how you feel about it. It could be the fear of judgment, failure, or even trying something new. Recording these thoughts helps you give shape to what's in your mind and often reveals patterns. Over time, revisiting these notes can show you how far you've come. 2. Gradually face discomfort. Gradual exposure is a powerful technique for overcoming fear. Think of something you avoid and break it into smaller steps. For instance, if you fear rejection, start with simple interactions, like greeting a stranger, then move on to more meaningful conversations. The key is not to rush, but also not to stop. Nietzsche believed that growth happens at the edges of discomfort. It's there, in the tension, that transformation becomes possible. 3. Practice small acts of courage every day. Choose something that requires a little courage. It could be voicing your opinion in a meeting, trying something new, or even allowing yourself to rest when you feel pressured to be productive. The accumulation of these small acts builds the confidence needed to face bigger challenges. As Nietzsche said, it's in our everyday choices that we shape who we are. 4. Draw inspiration from stories of resilience. Remember, courage isn't a solitary journey. Find inspiration in the stories of people who faced their fears and transformed their lives. Think of someone who overcame shyness to lead teams, or artists who turned their vulnerabilities into a source of creation. These narratives not only show that overcoming fear is possible, but also remind us that fear is universal, and choosing to face it is within everyone's reach. 5. Reflect on your why. For Nietzsche, the why is the force that sustains our courage. Reflect on what truly matters to you. What's at stake when you face your fears? Perhaps it's the desire to connect with others, fulfill a long-held dream, or simply live in a way that aligns with your values. When you gain clarity about why you're facing something difficult, the how becomes more bearable. In the end, building courage is like strengthening a muscle. Every act, every choice, no matter how small, contributes to a more authentic version of yourself. Courage doesn't have to be perfect. It only needs to be practiced. Life presents us with countless opportunities to choose, but fear often decides for us. Nietzsche challenges us to take control of those decisions, not by eliminating fear, but by coexisting with it courageously. He understood that while fear is inevitable, courage is a choice we can make every day. Think about everything we've discussed so far. Courage, according to Nietzsche, is about affirming life in all its challenges. It doesn't arise from the absence of fear, but from the recognition that living fully requires facing it. Fear acts like frosted glass, distorting reality and convincing us that we're not capable yet. With small steps and conscious choices, we can transform that fear into strength. Now, reflect. What fear has been holding you back? Perhaps it's the fear of change, failure, or even losing something you hold dear. Whatever it may be, ask yourself, what lies on the other side? What opportunity or lesson might emerge if you take the first step? Nietzsche believed that it's in these moments that we move closer to who we truly are. Courage doesn't need to be perfect or grand. It's built through simple but consistent actions. Today, take one step, no matter how small. Write down a fear and think of something concrete you can do to face it. Because in the end, courage isn't a destination. It's a practice that transforms us daily. Share in the comments what fear you're ready to challenge and the first step you plan to take. Your story could inspire others to do the same. If this video helped you, like, share, and subscribe. Together, let's build a community where fear doesn't define us. Courage does.